And I think that that would be very important to record this lecture, so for those people who couldn't join, and then we would be able to also share it in the class. So before we talked about computer science, and you wrote already about some of the definitions that you know, and what are the foundations and foundational things that we need to know is some basics of networks and basics of discrete mathematics, which are essential for computer science, and you will soon understand why. Importantly, these systems, for example, networks, they are very specific object, which is a subject of studies of different mathematics, parts of mathematics, which describe how things are connected. For example, when you construct a network for the computer, computer science, computers in, for example, connecting different computers in a network in order to be able to operate and in order to send different messages from one part to another, you will be able to actually connect different parts, and you will be able also to describe where in your network, for example, if you connect your house with another house with a telephone network or internet network, you need to know where the hubs are. So essentially, this is a very, very important part of analysis. I see that, Arya, you raised your hand. Yes, please.
Sorry, teacher, can I have a question?
Yes, of course.
In here that you teach us, this is the part of computer science, or now we just study the basics of that things. I just
So,
didn't
yeah.
understand.
Yes. So I'm mostly right now what I'm trying to more to work on and to explain here is that I'm trying to explain what are the foundational knowledge that you will need to go for computer science. Right now, of course, we will not be able to go through all fields of mathematics that will help you to understand more computer science and to understand more how to program. But I just wanted to mention some important parts of different areas that will be very important, and they include mathematics, right? We will not be able to study the whole mathematics just in 1 hour, but it will be very essential that you would be able to know what at least you will be able to learn, right? For example, when I study sociology, and I'm not sociologist, right? People told me that I need to read this book or I need to read this course. So, for example, if you study the science, the network science, that will be a very important part for you to understand how to program later on. It will not be a knowledge which you will immediately apply in your programming class, but it will really help you, will help your brain basically to write programs, right? And in general, network science is very much related to what they call discrete mathematics. So if you talk and you want to learn some foundations of computer science, are really related to those areas, right? Because actually, when we learn to program, quite often we need to design algorithms, and for this we need to understand how things are connected, and for this you will need to represent some entities. For example, entities of your code, you can represent them as parts of a bigger, larger system, and this is how generally, right, it is related to this. I hope that this answers your question, because indeed it may not be as straightforward, but I hope that it's good for you. Yeah. And so I will continue with that, and please stop me if you have more other questions, because we will come back to this in a few moments, to the foundations of also network science. Just wanted to make sure that you all are aware that what we're teaching here is not just programming, it's also some foundations that will make you creative, and that will make you also to make sure that you realize that you can also create something from your, for example, knowledge, that you are not just copy pasting some texts from one part to another in order to computer to do something, which is not called computer science, but computer science is more also when you can co-design and co-create with your knowledge, which you have, for example, in mathematics, in physics, and that's a very, very creative field, essentially. What we will use here as a programming language is called Python. Python is a computer science language which is object-oriented, so you can actually create and you can actually make and refer to parts of your code. And it's a very, very unique language in a sense that it has been developed such that also it's still object-oriented, but it may be less complex to study than C++ language. I don't know if any one of you have studied Python before. Maybe you can raise your hand. And yeah, so Python will be something which we all probably will be able to test and to see. And I will send you this link to the Colab. I don't know if you have ever used it. Maybe you can tell me if you have used it, or maybe if you have not used it, it's fine. Okay. So we all will be able to use the Colab, and I will try to share it with you so that we will be able to all try it, and you will be able to run this notebook and try it yourself as an introduction class. But before I copy paste the link in the chat for this programming, I would like to know more about how this what I'm gonna do and what I will be able to operate with. And for this, we will need to talk a little bit about what they call data types and what are the data types for creating different configurations in your research. So for example, data types of containers, data types of lists, data types of dictionaries, sets, tuples, functions, classes. So all those data types which are essential for programming, and it may sound a little bit more difficult. Sorry, Shukriya, I hope that you can hear us. We are recording this, so I hope that you will be able to follow it. And because we started half an hour ago, I will be able also to share the slides with you so that you also have access to all of that, and you will be able to see that. So I will copy paste the link also in the presentation so that you also have this access to this, and I will also be able to share that with you very, very soon. So um, about the basics of computer science in Python, we will all need to work with something which is called NumPy array and array indexing and data types. Have you heard about what is the basic data types? So what are the basic data types? Or like what can be called data types in computer science? So what are the data types which you would probably refer to, or so I will explain them, because maybe it's not really something which is very easy to explain in the chat. And so data types are something which people refer to usually as foundations of computer science. And you can give me, for example, the information, because I'm human, in a very different forms, right? So you can tell me, for example, a word, and I will understand that this is a word. You can give me a number, and I will understand that this is a number. But if I'm a computer, when you give me a number and you don't specify that this is a number, right? It will be very hard for me to understand that this is a number. So this is why we need to specify when we give a computer a number that this is a number. And that's what essentially the data types are, right? So before you give any information to the computer, you need to think of what exactly form it will be. And that's also very foundational later on. It will be very foundational for the artificial intelligence, because then it will be very important to later on to tell that actually computers can also recognize themselves that this is a number, right? They will not need to specify it in all details. And that's a very, very foundational part of computer science, where you will be able to say that, oh, we don't need to explain that, right? Need to specify that. So here there are different types of data types that we will go through with you very soon, that are lists, dictionaries, sets, tuples. And there are also other types, maybe which are less familiar for you, which are also classes and functions. And so they are, yes, Arya? Yes, you had a question? Yeah, you had a question, or? Okay, I will continue then. And I hope that...
Oh, sorry, teacher. I didn't know where my hand. Sorry.
Yes, okay. Um, so I will continue. So I was talking about data types, and I mentioned the functions and classes. These are very, very specific and very interesting data type, because it's something which is very original. It's something which is a very different part of something that us as humans are not really familiar. Because when you want to write a function for in your, for example, computer science part, this is something which we will be able to operate with as humans, of running the function which will produce different other outputs. It will produce, for example, numbers. A function in computer science language, it will produce output, or it can produce arrays, or it can produce other functions. That's a very foundational part also of computer science. And also another thing is also something which is called classes, which is again also a very specific part of object-oriented also programming. And the object-oriented programming languages, for example, like Python, that is something which we will need to soon talk about and operate. But let me maybe walk you through first with Python. You don't have to actually learn how to install it for now. It's enough for you to use Google Collaboratory, which is a really efficient tool to actually program when you haven't installed it on your computer yet. And that's something which has been developed and has contributed largely to computer science kind of spreading and literacy of computer science. So in this collab, what is very important to understand is that it's very intuitive. and you can, for example, code something in computer science with something which is called the notebook. And parts of notebook are parts where you write code. So when you write code, you write it in the code part, and then you can also create a text. For example, you can write a comment on your code. Yeah. And you can already actually go to the Colab research, and you can already try it there, or like try to open your first empty part of the lecture on the notebook. But the most important part will be that you will be able to what they call compile your code without executing this on your computer. Something which you will need to keep in mind with the Colab is that it will not be possible to do that with your your drive. You will need to maybe also at some point mount it, what they call, and you will need to have enough space in order to run it. But essentially you run it not on your computer, and that's what I was referring in the beginning of the lecture, that we kind of outsourced the power of our computers, and that's why we also are able to do that, right? Not to write the code also on only our computers, but also on our phones. So that's something which is a very important part. So basics of the computer science, what we talked about, that's why I spent so much time on that, is that you have different data types, which are functions, which are classes, and they can be also numbers, they can be also words, right? And these all is very, very different subparts, which we all can kind of go through if we want, for example, to write a good program. This program, for example, is an example from the Google Colab tutorial, where you get something in the function, which is called array or R, and this is called a variable, right? So this is something which we will also now use a lot. In the case of a variable, what is a variable, right? What is it's when you're not specifying. For example, you can say, for example, here, and this is how you are able to write a comment. So this is something which a computer will not run. So variable R is something which is, you can consider it as an empty box. And a variable is something which is an empty box which you fill out with some information. For example, you can specify that variable AR is equal to 1, right? And you can specify it and then execute your code, and then it will be equal to 1 all the way long afterwards and down there, right? So you will always specify that ARR is 1. But in this program, ARR is not specified. And this is something which is very, very important and very foundational. It will help you a lot later on for computer science when you will program, because you don't have to specify sometimes variables. So this is what they call free variable, and you don't have to specify ARR does not have any value inside. So imagine that, yes, Arya, you raised your hand, right?
I'm sorry, teacher. Just I have confused. Can I have a question
Of
about
course.
this
Yes.
variable arg that you written here? It means that this variable is equal to 1.
Yes. So here, in this case, variable ARR it has a value, right? It has a value, and you basically you can think about it as putting some name on a box, right? So imagine that your variable is something which you have in mathematics, right? Variable in mathematics, it's something like what you what you can, for example, write down in your mathematics equation. For example, you have x plus 1 equals 2, right? And then we all will be able to calculate that variable x, right? That it will be equal to 1, right? So we calculate, we estimate the value of the variable. And the same way in computer science, right? When you write a program, you can put into your variable a value which you will want to operate with. For example, later on, this variable can be, for example, associated with your price of, for example, of a chocolate or something that you want to operate or save in your computer, right? So, and if, for example, this variable ARR equals 1, this is just an example of a value that you can later on change. So, for example, if I say ARR equals 2, and then afterwards, let's see what happens, right? We experiment, and that's always a very nice way to experiment without kind of being afraid that something is wrong, because you can always debug your code, and we can see which what are the possibilities are. So right now to program is very easy in a sense that we can always use help, and we can always use this in a kind of possibility to get the values of different objects that we are putting here. So for example, we can print a value of the variable, right? And why we need the concept of a variable? Because variables are easy to operate with. We can reassign the values. And so, for example, here we can print a value of r, and we can see that the value of r is 2, sorry. This is the last value that we assigned. So value of ARR is 2, because this is the last one which we assigned. But then afterwards, here we are actually running a program, right? So we are running the function, and we need to running a function here, right? And when we are running a function, we are executing something which is called sorting, because you can ask your computer, for example, how to sort things. And something which is amazing in the computer science is that actually you will be able to do some very complex tasks, such as, for example, sorting very big arrays very fast, without really us being involved in this task. So what we have here is that we have a function which is pre-coded function. So there are a lot of functions, and functions in programming language, they can be either pre-coded, or they can be functions which are you are coding them by the user. And this function, for example, the function len, let's say, for example, that we want to print the value of the function of the function. Okay, I hear myself. So for example, here we can say that we want to print the value of the function len, right? And then we can also say that, oh, let's print the function len, and let's, for example, give this function, okay, wait, I hear someone speaking, and okay, good. So here, for example, in this case, ARR is a number. right? So we can say that this is a number. And okay, so I will try to mute someone. Someone is not able to mute, and we hear. Okay. Okay, thank you. So here, this data type, right, which we have been operating with a function quicksort, is two different variables. The variable ARR, which is the variable of the type of a number, or then we will be later also be able to see and compare these data types. And what another thing that we will be able to do in the function, and that's a very, very important foundational part, is that actually when you access the function and when you start to write a code, you will need to understand what this variable type is, right? Because I told you that we can give to a function different data types. We can give, for example, to a function something that is actually of a type of a word, but maybe it will be actually of a different type. Maybe it will be of a type of an array. An array is another very important part of it. So let's see what happens here, right? Because what we can do is essentially to get an answer of all our questions that we are asking to print out, right? Properties, for example, here we have the type of the so wait. So we are asking to print the type of variable, which is a variable ARR, right? Type. And we will see that ARR type is the value of value 2 is type int or integer. Integer is just numbers. I see that somebody raised your hand. Right.
Teacher, I have a question. Sorry
Yes.
again. See in here, a little bit. I get confused. First, you tell that the R is the price of R is 2, right? Then now it's also 1 and 2. I just confused about this.
So here we are experimenting, right? We are trying to see what actually how computer understands what we are writing, right? So we are assigning different numbers to the same variable. And this is totally possible. You will be able always to change the values that you put in a box, right? So you first you put value 1 into the variable RR, right? And then you put the value of 2 inside the same variable. And in fact, what computers will understand that they will take the latest value that you assigned to your variable. That's a very, very important thing to remember. So for example, imagine that you write a program and somewhere in the beginning, you assigned a value to your variable and then you forgot about it. And then computers will remember it and they will always think of it that this is actually something very, very kind of foundational and actually very, very important thing to remember, that you always need to print out things that are assigned values to your computers and like to your variables which you have written in your computers, because sometimes it can create some confusing information that you will not sometimes be able to understand then whether your program is correct, because sometimes you may assign the value to the variable and then forget about it. why do we spend so much time on that and about the variable data types and about all this? Like, we could have said, oh, that's just very simple, right? And intuitive. We can assign variables some values. We just need to remember which values they have been assigned to. But the trick is that all the variables can change not just values, but also, and that's also what I will print out here, is that important part is that also one thing to remember is that variables can also change data types. So and that's what is a magic about that. It's really truly a magic, and you will see that because in the beginning we had this variable ARR, which was assigned to be the integer or just a number, right? So I as Arya, you asked, right? Like, it was strange that it was first 1, then 2, but these are all integers. It's all fine. It's just one type of the variable type, right? So it's nothing complex, just one type of the variable type. And then afterwards, so we are then able to change the data type. That's what you will see when you will execute the program. And that's what you will see when we will run the program, and we will ask basically to tell us what is a function, right? So for example, we are running a function and we are asking it to give us the type of the variable. So for example, we are saying that the value of R is 2. Then we say that we see that the type of the variable is integer. And that's very, very important part to remember, right? That it is integer in the beginning. But then variables, we see that, and this is our program that writes it down, right? That we see that we can also say then that afterwards, variables can also change data types, and that this is actually something that is changing the values and also changing the variables types. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you had a question, Arya? So you see that running a function, we are actually changing that the variable type R becomes a list. So list is a very important part. Yeah.
Sorry that I cut you, teacher.
No
And
problem.
my question is that when we use R in mathematics or in computer science, but I don't know when we use this, or even we know the cost of this or the price of this, that this is 2 or 1. Then when we use
When we use it, yes. Say it again. Yeah.
Teacher, I said that this is R, right? You said
Yes.
its value is 1. So when we use R, I just it's about some problems of mathematics or computer science. I just confused.
You know, it's not a problem in a sense. It's actually freedom. So it's kind of freedom, kind of you being able to change your own way to reassign the values. For example, here, what we are doing is that we are doing what they call quick sorting mechanisms, right? So we are quickly we are sorting out the array, or a list in this case. We are sorting it. So for example, initially you have a sort, right? You give an array which is, yes, Hadia, it's first class, and we're almost done for the first class because we have been talking for 1 hour and I don't want you to get overwhelmed. So I will soon give you some assignments and will ask you also to try some of this collab tutorial yourself. So we have been doing some of this sorting of the variables which we have been giving to the computer, right? So for example, we are giving the variables which can be either an array, or it can be a list, or it can be many other things, right? So it's something which we are giving the information to the computer when we want to actually be able to for example, sort our array, right? So we are giving the computer this initial array, and we are asking it to sort it out. So let's say that we want to print first unsorted array, and then we want to print sorted array. And let's see what happens, that before this program, we are having this array, which is a list of unsorted values. And then afterwards, after these values, it will become the sorted array. So I hope that this will be able, you will be able to understand and grasp the idea behind it. We will be able, I will give you assignments of trying out this Colab tutorial yourself right now. And when you will have, if you will have any questions, maybe we can discuss it in WhatsApp group, or I will ask Aman what will be the best. But basically, the assignment would be to try tutorial. For this, you don't have to install anything on programming in Python, doing the quick sort function, which sorts the array. And today, I know that, Arya, you were asking really a lot of good questions. It's very important that even if it is confusing, it is fine, actually, because sometimes it's very non-intuitive how some languages, some programming languages are organized. So that's why it's actually very important that you keep answering. So it's something which is very important to remember, and that's something which we will be able to look at next time when we will meet. So I see that some people are joining. I guess that there was some confusion about the time, but it's I hope that we will also discuss with you more. And I hope also that we will be able to meet again when we will find a good time for that. And for now,